Hi, everybody. Mitch Tannenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for this week's security news update. NTLM, what is called new technology, which is really very, very old technology. Excuse me. Land Manager has been deprecated. It is buggy. It is vulnerable. There's lots of software that still uses it. It will be removed from new server builds in the next version of Windows. You can probably manually, or will be able to probably manually install it, but you don't want to install something that you know is not secure. My suggestion would be to turn it off now and see what you break, because you will likely break stuff. And that way you can work on fixing it before the next major release of Windows comes out. In the AI alerts department, no big surprise here. This is about half the people are using unsanctioned tools, mostly free consumer grade tools, which, take your data and use it however they want to, right? Because there's no rules. When the tools are free, you are the product. Under CMMC, the rules are kind of changing. I just did a video which will be out on the website tomorrow. So check that out. Not a lot of major stuff yet. A lot of stuff is getting moved around in the DFARS. What's interesting is what didn't get changed, which is 7012, the core of CMMC, 7021 and 7025, which are the clauses that say, here's what your CMMC requirements are. So those didn't change. A few other things changed, and I'm sure there will be more stuff around the edge. It does not look like anything major is going to impact CMMC. A lot of other major stuff will happen. I mean, the changes are massive, and how they're doing it is very interesting. Check out the video. In the software and hardware department, Microsoft is finally going to take. Microsoft bought Sysinternals from Mark Russinovich back in, I don't know, 2006 maybe, and he's been acting in the role of a Microsoft fellow for a couple of decades now. They're finally starting to take the tools that he developed, which are great tools, and integrate them into Windows in the next version of Windows. So look for that. You're still going to have to turn them on, but they're there. So that's kind of cool. In the important issues and patches department, the Chinese government-sponsored hackers have installed targeted malware into Notepad++, which is an app which millions of people use. It's a great app. So you want to make sure that you actually are running the most current version. What they did was there was kind of a, I don't know what you call it, but basically a piece of malware will decide whether or not you're a company that they want to target. And if you are, then it will download further malware to go off and compromise your stuff. So just get the most current version. In the breaches department, having failed to extort Panera Bread out of millions of dollars, they're publishing their data. They claim to have stolen 700 plus gigabytes worth of data. So we'll see what that is, but I'm sure it's customer data is part of it, but maybe corporate data. So if you are a Panera Bread customer, you may get a love note from them. In China, they are not immune to being hacked. They're not only just the hackers, but sometimes the hackees. Recently, an 8.7 billion record Elasticsearch database was compromised, and amongst the things that were included in the compromised data are Chinese national ID numbers, also home addresses, plain text passwords, other stuff. So the hacking group Shiny Hunters has published what it claims are 1 million records each for Harvard and University of Pennsylvania because they wouldn't pay the ransom. That's kind of what we see. We're seeing more and more. They're much less interested in encrypting the data because they're discovering that people have decent backups for the most part. And if you haven't tested your backups, you don't know that. And when I mean tested, I don't mean just go off and recover a record on the file server. I mean, every single system you have, you need to be testing at least once a year to see whether they'll actually restore. If you need help with that, let us know. But these records that are published are alumni records that include the details of your donations, your biographical information, and other information that they use in fundraising. The data breach from last year, tech giant Conduit, is now ballooned to many millions of records. Literally half the population of Texas was affected. That's a big state they're in. They handle medical records. So who knows what the fine's going to be, but they're still trying to figure out what was compromised, who was compromised, what data was compromised. But they are starting to send out notices to people. A little late, Conduit, a little late. Congress is turning your car into Big Brother. New cars very soon will be required to have passive capability to detect if you are inebriated. One possible way they could do it is an inward pointing, that is pointing at you, camera that's looking to see whether they don't like your eyes or whatever. It's passive, right? So they're not going to ask you to do anything. But if you, they decide you're weaving too much or whatever, they may shut off your car and hope you have cell service at that point. Because there is no appeal. Not great. Next, the French police are going after Twitter and Musk. They've invited him to come to France and tell his side of the story about Rock producing child porn and a bunch of other stuff, which is illegal in France. Since it's voluntary, they may or may not come. I don't know. But this goes along with the EU investigating Musk and the UK investigating Musk. So this would get very messy for him. He doesn't like governments telling him what to do. But this is one of those cases where he may not like the results if he doesn't listen to what the governments tell him to do. So we shall see. Malware out there, which is was being called an EDR killer, EDR, endpoint detection and response, is basically what we used to call antivirus. And this software has the ability to compromise your system and then start turning off the security tools. And it understands like 50 different security tools, so all of the major ones, and it just shuts them down. At that point, their system is slightly less protected, I would say. And finally, the security news bites for this week. Not surprisingly, I guess, the president's pick for the new head of the NSA likes full-blown maximum surveillance. One of the challenges of this was called the dual-hatted nature of the NSA, where they're both responsible for, or the head of the NSA is responsible for both offensive and defensive security. It's really hard to do, but we seem to be reticent to go off and separate those two. I think they do need to be separated. Next is, what is your level of paranoia? A Washington Post reporter had a search warrant executed on her house, and then she went to the court and said, I would like my tech stuff back. Personally, I think the only thing I'd do with that tech stuff once I got it back would be run it over with my car, because you can count on it. It's loaded with all kinds of malware. But she wants it back, and they don't want to give it back to her because they said they haven't been able to hack her iPhone yet. So depending on what your level of paranoia is, there is a way to lock down the iPhone significantly. And apparently it's good enough that the FBI is challenged at getting through it, but it also disables a bunch of features. So you have to decide which is more important to you. DHS is trying to force big tech to hand over data about Trump critics. Legally, they can ask for certain stuff. They can't ask for other stuff. But again, watch this if you're concerned about your privacy. Finance says, now here's a shocker, the security on some of their executives' devices was not great. And the result of that was hackers were able to compromise those computers and steal $40 million in crypto. They might want to make sure that your executive security is up to the task. And a couple senators are asking the Pentagon to probe SpaceX for potential Chinese ownership. Surprise! We knew that was there. And these guys are the Chinese are doing this very surreptitiously. They're routing the funds through other countries to make it look like it wasn't coming from China, even though it is. So anyway, that's what we have for this week. If you have questions, and I wouldn't be surprised if you do, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you. And until next time, stay safe, and thanks for listening.